The Galactic Council Station floated in space like a giant crystal flower. Inside its walls, representatives from 847 different species met to discuss the future of the galaxy. They had been doing this for thousands of years. The Council made rules, settled disputes, and kept peace across 12,000 star systems. Humans had joined the Council 200 years ago. They were species number 452 on the official list. The Council marked them as adequate tier contributors in their files. This meant humans were good enough to stay, but not important enough to matter. Captain Jiho walked through the lower levels of the Council Station. His boots made soft sounds on the metal floors. He carried a toolkit over his shoulder. Behind him, his team followed. Hana checked her datapad while Minho pushed a cart full of spare parts. They were heading to fix another broken power relay. The three of them worked in the maintenance section. Every day they fixed things that broke on the massive station. Climate controls, gravity generators, water systems, communication arrays. If something stopped working, humans fixed it. The other species barely noticed them. To most council members, humans were like the cleaning crew. Necessary but forgettable. Ambassador Yuna sat in the council chamber far above them. The chamber was beautiful. Light came through colored glass walls. Seats rose in circles, each one designed for a different species body type. Yuna sat in the human section, which was near the back. The important species sat in front, close to the speaking floor. Yuna had been Earth's ambassador for 15 years. She was good at her job. She spoke 12 languages and understood 30 more. She knew council law better than most species who had been members for centuries. Today, she was proposing a new medical protocol. It would help doctors treat patients from different species more quickly. The Vexthari delegate in front of her barely looked up when Yuna finished speaking. "We will consider this proposal," he said in a bored voice. It was the same thing he said about every human proposal. Consider meant forget. Yuna knew this. Everyone knew this. A quorum council member stood up next. The quorum looked like walking trees with too many arms. This one's name was Dreth. "Perhaps the human delegate should focus on simpler matters," Dreth said. Other delegates made sounds of agreement. Some laughed quietly. Yuna kept her face calm. She had learned not to show anger here. She bowed her head politely and sat down. Another human idea went into the files where it would never be seen again. Below the council chamber, Engineer Sman was installing a new power grid in the station's east wing. She had designed it herself. The new grid would use 30% less energy and never overload. It was brilliant work. When she filed the completion report, the system automatically labeled it as Council Engineering Division Project. No mention of her name, no mention of humans at all. Scientist Dwin worked in the translation department. He had created new algorithms that helped the station's computers translate between species faster. Before his work, translations sometimes took minutes. Now they were instant. 200 species used his system every single day. The official records said the council technical team had made improvements. Dwin's name appeared nowhere. Pilot Nari trained emergency response teams. When accidents happened on the station, these teams needed to act fast. Nari taught them how to stay calm, work together, and save lives. She was the best teacher the program ever had. Her students loved her. But when the council published their training manual, a Talgar commander's name was on the cover. This was how things worked. Humans did the work. Others took the credit. For 200 years, this pattern never changed. The Talgar were a warrior species. They were tall, covered in scales, and very proud. High Commander Vorath led their delegation. He walked through the maintenance levels one day and saw Geo's team working on a junction box. "Still fixing things, little humans," Vorath said. His voice was full of mockery. "Perhaps if your species spent less time with wrenches and more time with weapons, you would earn real respect." Jiho didn't look up from his work. "Someone has to keep the lights on, Commander." Vorath laughed and walked away. His heavy boots echoed down the corridor. That night, Jiho, Hana, and Minho sat in the human quarters drinking tea. The quarters were small, but comfortable. Pictures of Earth hung on the walls. "Do you ever wonder if it's worth it?" Hana asked quietly. Minho stared into his cup. Every day, Jiho said nothing. He wondered too. They all did. The crisis started on a Tuesday. The Kunthon Empire attacked 3 border colonies without warning. The Kunthon were raiders who lived on the edge of council space. They had new weapons, new ships, and new tactics. Most importantly, they had artificial intelligence that learned and adapted in real time. The Council sent their fleets to defend the colonies. The Talgar commanded these fleets. High Commander Vorath personally led the first battle group. He was confident. The Talgar had won 1,000 wars. They knew every battle strategy. They had the best weapons and the strongest warriors. The Cathon destroyed Vorath's fleet in 4 hours. Only 20 ships escaped out of 200. The Cathon AI studied the Talgar tactics, found their weaknesses, and exploited them perfectly. Every move Vorath made, the enemy countered 3 moves ahead. The Council gathered in emergency session. Species representatives shouted at each other. Some blamed the Talgar for poor planning. Others said the Council needed new weapons. A few suggested negotiating with the Canon. Nothing was decided. The meeting went on for hours. During a break, Captain Jiho and tactical analyst Hun approached Ambassador Yuna. Hun carried a data pad. "We have an idea," Jiho said quietly, "about the Crethon problem." They explained their plan in a side room. The Cthon AI was smart, but it relied on predicting patterns. Human quantum coordination protocols could create attack patterns with no predictable structure. The defensive networks would coordinate through quantum entanglement, making decisions faster than the Cathon AI could process. It was complex but doable. Yuna listened carefully. "This could work," she said, presented to the military council. The next day, Jiho and Hyun stood before the council's military leaders. The room was filled with high-ranking officers from a dozen species. Jiho explained the quantum coordination system. He showed simulations. The data was solid. The plan would work. High Commander Vorath stood up before Jiho finished. "This is foolishness," Vorath announced. His voice carried across the room. "We do not need tricks from maintenance workers. The Talgar have defended this council for 3,000 years. We know warfare. Humans know wrenches and repair tools." Several other commanders nodded. A quorum admiral spoke up. "The human species has limited combat experience. Perhaps they should leave strategy to their betters." Hyun tried to speak. "If you would just look at the data enough," Vorath said. "Return to your repair duties. The council military will handle this threat properly." Jiho and Hyun left the room. Behind them, they heard laughter. 3 more colonies fell. The next week, the Crethon advanced deeper into council space. Traditional tactics failed again and again. The council's fleets died bravely, but uselessly. The Creon AI was simply too fast, too smart, too adaptive. Then something unexpected happened. 3 small species secretly contacted the human delegation. These species had colonies under attack. The council's protection had failed them. They were desperate. "Please help us," their representatives begged. "We will pay anything." Jiho looked at Yuna. She looked at him. They both knew what helping meant. If the council found out, there would be consequences. But people were dying. "Well, do it," Yuna said. "No payment needed." Jiho's team worked through the night. They couldn't install the full defensive system, but they could implement the basic protocols. They trained local engineers in secret. They uploaded the quantum coordination software to the defense networks of 17 colonies belonging to the 3 smaller species. 2 weeks later, the Cathon attacked these colonies. The defenders used the human protocols. The attack formations had no pattern. Defensive responses came too fast for the Cathon AI to predict. For the first time since the war began, the Crethon retreated. All 17 colonies survived without losing a single ship. News of the victory spread quickly. The 3 smaller species celebrated. Their people were safe. The Council's intelligence division investigated. They discovered the human protocols. They found out about the secret help. High Commander Vorath was furious. He called another emergency session. Ambassador Yuna stood before the full council. Every seat was filled. Every species was watching, for had demanded this public hearing. He wanted to make an example of human interference. The human delegation violated council military protocol. Vorath announced they implemented unauthorized offensive systems. They acted without council approval. "This cannot be tolerated." Yuna remained calm. "We saved 17 colonies and thousands of lives. The council's traditional methods were failing. We offered our help. It was refused. So, we helped those who asked for it." A Vexthari senator spoke up. "You should have waited for proper authorization." "How many more colonies should have died while we waited?" Hun asked from his seat. The council chamber erupted in argument. Some species agreed with the humans. Most did not. The council operated on tradition and hierarchy. Humans had broken both. After hours of debate, the Council reached a decision. They would take the human defense of technology, the quantum coordination protocols, the adaptive algorithms, all of it would become Council property. The systems would be given to the Talgar military to implement across all fleets. And what do humans receive in return? Yuna asked. The gratitude of the Council, Vorath said with a slight smile. Is that not enough? Yuna stared at him. No credit, no recognition, not even compensation for the technology. The Council does not bargain with provisional members, a quorum delegate said. You will surrender the technology for the greater good. This is not a request. Ambassador Yuna took a long breath. She had served the Council for 15 years. She had watched humans contribute and innovate for 2 centuries. She had seen their work stolen, their ideas dismissed, their people mocked. She had stayed professional through it all. She had believed things would improve. She was tired of believing. I have one more proposal, Yuna said. Her voice was steady but cold. A proposal for humanity's future status in this council. She laid out 200 years of human contributions. She showed the infrastructure humans built, the medical advances they shared, the diplomatic frameworks they created, the technologies they invented, the crisis they solved, the lives they saved. Every piece of data was documented and verified. We have met every requirement for elder species status, Yuna said. We have contributed more in 2 centuries than some species have in 2 millennia. We ask for equal standing in this council. We ask for respect. The chamber was silent, then the vote began. Electronic displays showed the count. Green for yes, red for no. The red numbers climbed higher and higher. Final vote. 731. Against. Humanity would remain provisional for another assessment period. Another century of being second-ass members. Another H100 years of thankless service. Yuna looked around the chamber. She saw smugness on some faces. Indifference on others. Not one expression showed shame. Thank you for considering our request, Yuna said. She gathered her documents. She bowed to the council one final time. Then she walked out. In her private office, she sent an encrypted message to Earth. It was 1 word long. Enough. The response came back in minutes. Director Taiyang's message was just as brief. Agreed. Come home. The decision was made in a conference room on Earth. 20 people sat around a long table. They represented Earth's unified government. Director Taiyang sat at the head. He was old now, with gray hair and tired eyes, but his mind was still sharp. We need to discuss our relationship with the Galactic Council, Taiyang said. Ambassador Yuna has returned with her final report. Yuna stood and presented the facts. 200 years of membership, 0 recognition, advanced technology shared freely, human workers treated like servants. Contributions attributed to Council collective efforts with no credit given. A recent vote, proving humans would never be respected as equals. Diplomat Mi spoke next. She had analyzed the economic data. Humanity has subsidized 47 failing Council programs. We rebuilt infrastructure on 23 different worlds. We provided emergency aid to 89 species. In return, we received normal trade agreements and access to Council space. Nothing special. Nothing earned. She brought up more numbers. 3 species have actually filed complaints about us. They claim human efficiency makes their own workers look bad. The Council agreed with them. They asked us to slow down our work to match the pace of others. Someone at the table laughed bitterly. Someone else swore. Taiyang raised his hand for silence. Chief Engineer Kithun delivered the technical report. He was a big man with rough hands and a serious face. Every major Council system has human-designed components. He said the translators that let 847 species talk to each other, built on human quantum linguistic algorithms. The FTL communication network uses human optimization protocols, medical databases, human architecture, environmental systems, on 400 stations, human engineering. He tapped his data pad. Numbers appeared on the wall screen. The Council doesn't know this. They never looked at the underlying code. They just assumed their own people built everything. We never corrected them, because we thought our work would eventually be recognized. It wasn't. So, we're essential, Taiyang said. And they don't know it exactly, Kithun said. Scientist Yunji spoke up. She was young and brilliant. I proposed the long sunset protocol, she said. We don't just leave. We can't. If we pulled out today, Billions would die when the infrastructure collapsed. We're not monsters, she explained her plan. Over 2 years, humanity would systematically train replacements. Every system would be documented in detail. Redundant backups would be created. Council species would be given every tool and piece of knowledge they needed to maintain what humans built. We give them everything. Yunji said the technology, the training, the documentation. We leave nothing out. Then we leave. What they do with that knowledge is up to them. The room was quiet. People looked at each other. Finally, Taiyang spoke. We came to the council, hoping to join a community of equals. Instead, we became unpaid servants. The question is simple. Do we stay and hope things change, or do we leave with dignity? He called for a vote. It was unanimous. Earth would withdraw from the Galactic Council. The decision was announced to Earth's population the next day. Director Tang appeared on screens in every city, every station, every ship. We have decided to leave the Galactic Council, he said calmly. Not in anger, not in revenge, but in recognition that we deserve better. We will leave them everything we built. Whether they value it is their choice. Whether we continue to give ourselves freely to those who don't respect us is ours. The response from Earth's people was overwhelming. Support came from every continent, every nation, every group. Even the most optimistic humans had grown tired. Tired of being ignored. Tired of being dismissed. Tired of giving and giving, while receiving nothing but condescension. The withdrawal began the next week. Quietly, professionally, without drama. Human embassies started filing routine personnel rotation requests with the council. A few dozen humans left each station every month. It seemed completely normal. What the council didn't notice was that no new humans arrived to replace them. Captain Jiho's team began the most delicate work. They had to transition critical systems without causing catastrophic failures. They made lists of everything that needed to be taught: power grid maintenance, environmental controls, communication arrays, medical systems, thousands of complex systems, all requiring specialized knowledge. They started training programs. Vexthari engineers learned about power distribution. Quorum technicians studied environmental management. Talgar specialists took courses in communication technology. The classes were thorough and well organized. Most of the students didn't take them seriously. They thought they were learning simple maintenance tasks. The idea that these systems were complex never occurred to them. Hana worked on documentation. She created what she called the instruction library. It was huge. Thousands of manuals explaining every system humans had built or maintained. Everything was written clearly and simply. She made copies and placed them in 17 different locations throughout the council station. She registered every copy with the council's information ministry. She sent notifications to every relevant department. Not one department acknowledged receiving the notifications. Not one person looked at the manuals. They sat in their storage locations complete and ignored. Minho trained local technicians on the power grid. He showed them how the quantum load balancing worked. He explained the adaptive distribution nodes. He demonstrated the safety protocols. Most of his students nodded politely while thinking about other things. One quorum engineer actually fell asleep during a critical lesson about emergency shutdowns. "Do you understand how important this is?" Mino asked, frustrated. The quorum blinked his multiple eyes. "It is just power distribution. Yes, we have managed power for millennia. We will be fine." Minho wanted to argue. He wanted to explain that the old systems and the new systems were completely different. But he stayed quiet. The documentation existed. The training was offered. If they chose not to learn, that was their decision. Ambassador Yuna continued attending council sessions, but she stopped proposing new initiatives. When other delegates asked why, she said Earth was conducting internal reviews of policy. No one questioned this. Most of them were relieved. Fewer human proposals meant less paperwork to ignore. Across the galaxy, the same pattern repeated. Human doctors and council hospitals trained local medical staff, then quietly resigned. Human engineers on terraforming projects spent months documenting their procedures before leaving. Human researchers at science stations published their final papers and departed. Human teachers finished their courses and didn't return. The exodus took 18 months. Almost nobody noticed. Humans were maintenance workers after all. Low-level staff. They came and went. Why would anyone pay attention? A few people noticed. The 3 smaller species that humans had helped sent desperate messages to Earth. Please don't leave us, they begged. Jiho personally made sure these species had everything they needed. Advanced technology, detailed training, direct communication channels to Earth that bypassed the Council entirely. You treated us with respect, Jiho told their representatives. We won't forget that. On the final day, Ambassador Yuna requested time to address the Council. She stood on the speaking floor for the last time. The chamber was only half full. Most delegates had more important things to do than listen to a departing provisional member. I come to announce humanity's formal withdrawal from the Galactic Council, Yuna said. Her voice was clear and professional. We thank the Council for the opportunity to participate. We wish you success in the future. Humanity is recalling all citizens to pursue independent development. High Commander Vorath was one of the few senior members present. He actually laughed. The maintenance workers are leaving. Who will notice? Yuna looked at him directly. She smiled. It was a polite smile, but her eyes were cold. I suppose we'll find out, Commander. She bowed respectfully to the chamber. Then she turned and walked out. She didn't look back. Behind her, delegates talked among themselves. A few discussed how to redistribute Earth's former trade routes. One Vexthari senator suggested claiming Earth's embassy space for storage. Nobody considered that humanity's departure might actually matter. Humans fixed things. There were plenty of other species who could fix things too. The Council had survived for thousands of years before humans arrived. It would survive just fine after they left. On her ship leaving Axis Prime, Yuna stood at a window. She watched the massive Council station shrink in the distance. She felt many things. Sadness for the wasted years, anger at the disrespect. But mostly, she felt relief. They were finally going home. They were finally free. Any regrets? Captain Jiho asked, standing beside her. Only one, Yuna said. That we stayed as long as we did. The ship jumped to FTL. The Council station disappeared. Behind them, 847 species continued their endless debates, completely unaware that their entire civilization was about to start crumbling. 6 weeks passed. Nothing happened. The Council congratulated itself on handling humanity's departure smoothly. High Commander Vorath gave a speech about Council strength and unity. Several delegates proposed taking over Earth's former trade agreements. Everything seemed normal. Then the translation system failed. It started small. During a council session, a Vexthari delegate spoke about trade regulations. The quorum delegates heard her talking about military invasions. Confusion followed. The translator was checked and recalibrated. It worked fine for an hour, then started translating everything into ancient Talgar war poetry. The quorum technical staff tried to fix it. They followed standard council protocols for system repair. The problems got worse. Within 3 days, real-time translations stopped working completely. Delegates couldn't understand each other. Sessions dissolved into confusion and shouting. The Vexthari brought in their best linguistic experts. These experts had advanced degrees in xenolinguistics. They had studied language theory for decades. They looked at the translation system and discovered something terrifying. It wasn't one program. It was 47 interconnected subsystems running on quantum linguistic processing algorithms. The code was elegant and complex. The humans had made it look simple. It wasn't. Engineer Quan, a young Vexathari, found Hana's instruction library. He opened the manual for the translation system. It was 3,000 pages long. Page 1 explained that the system required constant updates and maintenance. Page 2 listed 17 different monitoring protocols. Page 3 began explaining quantum linguistic theory. Quan felt sick. How did the humans maintain this? He asked his supervisor. I don't know, his supervisor said. I thought it was automatic. Nothing this complex is automatic, Quan said quietly. The power grid on Axis Prime started fluctuating. Lights dimmed and brightened randomly. Gravity generators hiccuped. 3 districts lost gravity entirely for 5 minutes. People floated helplessly until gravity returned. The quorum chief engineer insisted it was a minor problem. Then the primary fusion reactor began overheating. They tried to stabilize it using standard procedures. The reactor's temperature kept rising. Emergency protocols failed. Finally, they found the instructions Minho had left behind. The manual explained quantum load balancing. It referenced adaptive distribution nodes. It used terms like harmonic resonance stabilization and multi-phase coherence management. The quorum engineer stared at the manual in horror. This is beyond our training, he admitted. They managed to prevent a meltdown by shutting down half the station's power. Thousands of residents were evacuated to other sections. The council headquarters went dark in sectors that hadn't seen darkness in centuries. Medical stations across the galaxy reported problems. The diagnostic equipment worked, but the results made no sense. A Talgar with a broken arm was diagnosed with a plant disease. A Quorum with respiratory issues was told she was pregnant, which was biologically impossible. 3 patients died because doctors couldn't figure out what was actually wrong with them. A Talgar physician named Korth investigated. She discovered that the diagnostic system was entirely human-designed. It used artificial intelligence that could interpret medical data from 10,000 different species. The old systems before humans arrived could barely handle a 100 species. The old systems alone were worthless in a diverse galaxy. "How did we not know this?" Kor asked. Her assistant pulled up the records. The humans integrated it seamlessly. It looked like an upgrade to existing systems. No one realized they had replaced the entire foundation. The FTL communication network developed increasing lag. Messages that used to arrive in seconds now took hours. Sometimes they took days. Investigation revealed that the network's routing efficiency came from human optimization algorithms. These algorithms ran in the background, constantly adjusting pathways to minimize lag. Without maintenance, the system was reverting to its original, much slower architecture. Trade schedules fell apart. Ships missed delivery windows. Diplomatic messages arrived too late to matter. The entire galaxy's communication infrastructure was falling apart in slow motion. High Commander Vorath finally read the military systems report. He had been avoiding it. The report was 500 pages of bad news. The defensive protocols that saved 36 worlds from the Kathon, human-designed. The coordination software his fleets used, human-developed. The logistics systems that supplied 600 military bases, human architecture. The early warning networks, human. The tactical simulation programs, human. The fleet communication systems, human. Vorath sat alone in his office, reading page after page. He remembered mocking Jiho. He remembered laughing at human proposals. He remembered calling them maintenance workers. The report fell from his hands. For the first time in his long military career, High Commander Vorath felt afraid. The emergency council session was chaos. Representatives from all 847 species tried to speak at once. Translation still didn't work properly, so most people just shouted. Ambassador Theeks of the Vex 3 finally restored order by threatening to shut off the malfunctioning sound system entirely. "We need an audit," they announced. "A complete audit of all systems. We need to know exactly what the humans did here." The audit took 3 weeks and required 400 specialists. The final report was 10,000 pages long. The summary was presented to the full council. It was short. It was damning. It was terrifying. Humans hadn't just fixed problems. They had rebuilt galactic civilization's foundation. The infrastructure of 8,000 stations ran on human engineering. Medical systems for 400 species used human diagnostic protocols. The trade network's efficiency, human algorithms, agricultural optimization, on by 200 worlds, human analysis, disaster response frameworks, human design, water purification on 600 worlds, human technology. The list went on and on. Power systems, communication networks, environmental controls, transportation coordination, emergency services, supply chain management, educational databases, scientific research tools, everything. Humans had touched everything. Counselor Dreth of the Quorum stood up slowly. He was old, even for his long-lived species. "I must say something," Dreth announced. His voice was quiet. The chamber fell silent. "They gave us everything. The knowledge, the tools, the training. We refused to value it. We refused because we didn't respect the source." The silence deepened. Nobody argued. Nobody could argue. A junior delegate from a small species asked the obvious question, "Why didn't we notice?" Engineer Quan answered. He had been brought in as part of the technical assessment team. "Because they made it look easy. Human systems were so well designed, so elegantly integrated, that they seemed simple. We mistook excellence for simplicity. We thought anyone could maintain them. We were wrong." The 3 smaller species that humanity had helped secretly were thriving. While elder species stations failed, these younger species maintained full functionality. They had listened during the training. They had studied the manuals. They had respected the knowledge regardless of who provided it. A Vexthari senator visited one of these species. "How are your systems still working?" she asked. The local engineer of being named Riff, from a species called the Tenari, showed her their documentation. "The humans taught us. We listened. We learned. We practiced. It wasn't easy, but we respected that they were experts. We offered the same training to everyone," the senator said quietly. "Yes," Riff agreed. "But you didn't think you needed it. You thought you already knew everything important. We knew we didn't." Back at the council, the military report was finally presented publicly. High Commander Vorath stood before the full assembly. His scales had lost their usual shine. He looked diminished. Human contributions prevented 47 wars through diplomatic frameworks. For Reed, human early warning systems stopped 12 potential pandemics. Human logistics prevented 8 famines. Human peacekeeping protocols resolved 200 disputes. Human translation systems enabled 1,000 successful negotiations. He continued reading. Each sentence was worse than the last. Every aspect of galactic security had human fingerprints. Systems that everyone assumed were traditional council operations were actually human innovations. "They held us together," Vorath said finally. "Not through force, through competence, through freely given service, through knowledge shared without asking for anything in return." Ambassador Thera pulled up Ambassador Yuna's rejected proposals. She projected them on screens for everyone to see. "Look at these," she said. "Every proposal would have prevented crises we now face. The medical initiative from 15 years ago would have created redundant diagnostic systems. We'd have backup systems right now. The engineering proposal from 10 years ago would have trained native experts in every system. We'd have qualified people to fix our problems. The diplomatic framework from 5 years ago would have prevented the Chthon conflict from escalating." She looked around the chamber. "We had the solutions. Humans gave them to us. We dismissed them because we thought we knew better." The Chthon situation was getting worse. Without human-designed defensive systems, Council fleets suffered defeat after defeat. 12 more colonies fell. The Chthon were now raiding deep into Council territory. Traditional military tactics failed because the Chthon AI adapted to everything the Council tried. "We need humanity back," a Talgar admiral stated. "We need them to rejoin immediately." The Council agreed. A message was composed. It was marked urgent priority. It listed all the crises. It asked, almost begged, for humanity to return. The message ended with a promise of better treatment. Earth's response arrived 3 days later. Director Taeyong's message was polite and formal. "Humanity thanks the Galactic Council for 200 years of cooperation. We wish you success in your future endeavors. We will consider limited trade agreements on equal terms. However, we have no plans to rejoin the Council. We left you everything you need to succeed. The knowledge, the tools, the training, the documentation. Whether you use it as your choice, whether you value it, is yours as well." The message was clear. Humanity wasn't coming back. Not as servants. Not as maintenance workers. Maybe not at all. The fatal error became clear to everyone. The Council didn't lose humanity's labor. Labor could be replaced. They didn't lose humanity's technology. It had all been left behind, documented, and explained. They lost humanity's willingness to freely share knowledge with people who refused to value them. That willingness, once broken, couldn't be bought back. Not with credits, not with titles, not with promises. Trust and respect, once destroyed, were nearly impossible to rebuild. The galaxy would survive, but it would be diminished, and it had only itself to blame. 5 years passed slowly. The Galactic Council survived, but everything was harder now. Systems that once ran smoothly required constant attention. Technology that once seemed simple revealed its true complexity. The galaxy learned to live in a world without humans. The infrastructure eventually stabilized. Council species learned to maintain the human-designed systems. It took years of intensive study. It required enormous resources and countless mistakes. But slowly, painfully, they adapted. They hired more technicians. They built new training programs. They actually read the manuals humans left behind. The 3 smaller species became major powers. Their success was obvious and undeniable. While elder species struggled, these younger species thrived. They had valued human knowledge. They had listened and learned. Now they prospered, while their former superiors scrambled to catch up. High Commander Vorath resigned in disgrace after his fleet suffered 3 more crushing defeats. The new military leadership approached warfare differently. They studied the human tactical manuals with genuine respect and humility. They actually followed the instructions. Slowly, they started winning again. The Crethon advance stopped, then reversed. But the victories came at a much higher cost than they would have under human coordination. Engineer Quan became the head of the Vexthari Technical Institute. He made Hana's documentation required reading for all students. They called it the Library of Foundation. Entire courses were built around studying human engineering principles. The first graduation ceremony included a moment of silence to honor the teachers who left knowledge behind, even when they weren't respected. The translation system never returned to its original efficiency. It ran at about 60% of what it once was. Council sessions took longer. Misunderstandings were more common. Diplomatic negotiations got harder. The Vexthari linguistic experts finally understood what they had lost. They had possessed the best translation system in galactic history. Built by humans, they dismissed as adequate tier contributors. Medical systems recovered partially. Cross-species medicine remained functional, but limited without humans to update the diagnostic protocols for new species and emerging diseases. Galactic healthcare took a significant step backward. New medical conditions were harder to diagnose. Treatment success rates declined. Thousands died from diseases that would have been easily cured 5 years earlier. The Council implemented new policies called the Respect Accords. Every species' contributions would be properly documented and credited. Technical expertise would be valued regardless of a species' age or status. Younger species pushed hardest for these changes. They had learned from humanity's example. The elder species agreed, finally understanding that respect couldn't be demanded through tradition alone. Formal delegations approached Earth repeatedly. They offered full elder species status, automatic credit for contributions, real voting power, everything humanity had originally asked for. Every offer was politely declined. Director Taiyang was older now, his hair completely white, but his message never changed. Earth has moved forward. We have new alliances. We have new goals. The past cannot be undone. But humanity did offer something. They called it the Partnership Initiative. Any species willing to participate as equals could access human expertise through joint projects. Not servants, not saviors, partners. 12 species immediately accepted. These included the 3 who had always treated humans with respect. Several elder species considered applying but hesitated, unsure if they could accept being equals with those they once considered inferior. Captain Jiho, now Admiral Jiho, visited Axis Prime on a diplomatic mission. He was there to negotiate a limited trade agreement. Engineer Quan met him at the docking bay. Quan was older too, with gray showing in his biological chromatophores. He bowed deeply. "We were fools," Quan said. "Thank you for leaving us the knowledge anyway. You could have destroyed it all. Many species would have." Jay helped him straighten. "We're not many species. Revenge isn't the same as justice. You're learning. That's what matters." "Some of us are learning," Quan corrected. "Others still don't understand what we lost." Jeho nodded. "That's their problem, not ours." They walked through the station together. Quan showed Jiho the improvements they had made. The power grid was stable now. Translation worked better. Medical systems were improving. It was all functional if diminished. "We're getting there," Quan said. "I can see that," Jiho replied. "You should be proud. It would have been easier if we had listened to you from the start." "Yes," Jiho agreed. "It would have been. But lessons we learn ourselves stick better than lessons we're told." On Earth, monuments honored the quiet departure. They weren't victory monuments. They were reminders. Reminders of the importance of knowing one's worth. The central monument in Geneva bore a simple inscription. "It's not about being superior. It's about refusing to be treated as inferior." Children learned about the departure in school. They learned about 200 years of service. They learned about the decision to leave. Most importantly, they learned the lesson: value yourself. Respect others, but never let others treat you with disrespect simply because they consider themselves better. The Galactic Council still governed hundreds of species. It maintained peace and facilitated trade, but it was fundamentally changed. In the council chambers, a new tradition emerged. Before each session, a reminder was read aloud. "Remember the humans who gave freely and left quietly, teaching us that respect cannot be demanded, only earned." Some species hoped humanity would return to the council someday. Most humans didn't think about the council much anymore. They were busy building something new. A civilization where contribution was valued, regardless of a species' age or power. Where expertise was respected regardless of its source. Where equals worked together as partners. The galaxy learned its lesson. Whether that lesson came too late depended on perspective. For the Council, they lost something precious. For humanity, they gained something more valuable. Self-respect. In the end, the humans had been right all along. They left quietly, not because they were weak, but because they were strong enough to know their worth. The galaxy finally understood what it meant to have humans as neighbors, and it understood too late what it meant to lose them. The story ended not with reconciliation, but with understanding.